Secklow Sounds.
Bringing people and communities together on SecklowSounds.org.
Your listening station. Listen to the radio. Harry and Edna's want to show you heard it from the Three Bells.
Finally found a fella, almost completely divine, but his vocabulary is killing this romance of mine. We get into an intimate situation, and then begins this Romeo's conversation. He says murder, he says, every time we kiss, he says murder, he says, at a time like this, he says murder, he says, is that the language of love? He says solid, he says, takes him in his arms, and says solid, he says, meaning all the charms, he says solid, he says, is that the language of love? He says, chick, chick, you torture me, zoot, are we living? I'm thinking of leaving him flat. He says, dig, dig, the jump the old kicker is given. No, he can go plainer than that. He says murder, he says, every time we kiss, he says murder, he says, keep it up like this and that, murder, he says, in that impossible tone, will bring on nobody's murder but his own. He says Jackson, he says, and my name's Marie, he says Jackson, he says, shoot the snoot to me, he says Jackson, he says, is that the language of love? He says, walk, walk, he says, when he likes my hat, he says, what the heck is that? He says, woo, woo, he says, is that the language of love? He says, pep, pep, with helium, now, babe, we're cooking, and other expressions to it. He says, we're into groove, and the groove is good looking. He sounds like his uppers don't fit. He says, murder! Murder! And away says murder, in that impossible tone. I've told him over and over and over again that it'll be nobody else's murder. Boy, but his own.
Whatto, Harry?
And whatto, Edna, and that was amazing.
It was rather.
Yeah. You may remember the great magic acts of the past, and I have just witnessed what an amazingness magic in front of my very eyes.
I think you're rather relieved as well, aren't you?
I was really. If you have been following the old Twitter Telegraph, I've been tweeting, so where's Edna? And people were taking bets. Lab Books had a bet on you that you might not even make it today.
Was it a zillion to one that I wouldn't actually make
It was something like that. And you literally walked through the door and I said, you've got 32 seconds.
Yes, so it's literally cans on, sit down.
In fact, your cans aren't on.
No, because they're too loud.
But I can... I'm getting a bit of whistle, dear.
Oh, are you?
So can you
yes,
do
I
something
shall.
with them?
Go on then. There you are. See?
That's better. Well, I'm glad you're here because you are the celeb of the show. Not only because you've got sparkling new nails.
Yes, which are very beautiful.
But you are the celeb because we're doing a historical programme.
Oh,
I always
goodness.
like them. They always make a change.
You're going to challenge me now on my historical
Well, not
knowledge.
particularly. What we're doing, we're going to have a look at something we've never done before, World War II through the eyes of children.
Yes, it's very true.
We've got a first-hand account. We've also got some original news reports we're going to play.
Yep.
And I thought we might touch on the fact that for the last few programmes you haven't been present, and that's because you've been out earning the rent.
Yes.
Doing talks on said very subject.
Is it 2 I've not made? 2 shows? Or was it 1?
I think it's loads.
Is it? Feels like I've been here for so long.
I've been sitting here all lonely on my own.
Oh, so unloved.
So I'm going to play a track. Now, if I've got this right, it's Gracie. Gracie.
Okay.
But that's
got it
not
wrong.
what it says on the label.
Okay.
So it may not be quite...
It's one of our mystery tracks.
It's a mystery track. Take your bets afterwards.
London pride has been handed down to us. London pride is a flower that's free. London pride means our own dear town to us, and our pride it forever will be. Whoa, Liza, see the Costa barrows, the vegetable marrows, and the fruit piled high. Oh, Liza, little London sparrows, Covent Garden Market where the costers cry. Cockney feet mark the beat of history. Every street pins a memory down. Nothing ever can quite replace the grace of London town. There's a little city flower every spring unfailing, growing in the crevices by some London railing. Though it has a Latin name, in town and countryside, we in England call it London pride. London pride has been handed down to us. London pride is a flower that's free. London pride means our own dear town to us, and our pride it forever will be. Hey, lady, when the day is dawning, see the policeman yawning on his lonely beat. Gay lady, Mayfair in the morning, hear your footsteps echo in the empty street. Early rain and the pavements glistening, all Park Lane in a shimmering gown. Nothing ever could break or harm the charm of London town. In our city darkened now, street and square and crescent, we can feel our living past in our shadowed present. Ghosts beside our starlit Thames, who lived and loved and died, keep throughout the ages London pride. London pride has been handed down to us. London pride is a flower that's free. London pride means our own dear town to us, and our pride it forever will be. Grey city, stubbornly implanted, taken so for granted for 1,000 years. Stay city, smokily enchanted, cradle of our memories, our hopes and fears. Every blitz your resistance toughening, from the Ritz to the Anchor and Crown. Nothing ever could override the pride of London town.
Now, Eva, our Gracie's been getting a bit confused in the old pills, or that wasn't Gracie Fields. No, it was indeed Mr. Noel Coward and a wonderful track, London Pride. You may notice there's going to be a bit of a theme today on the programme. We're going to be featuring probably World War II tunes that were particularly popular during the war in Britain. But, except for this one, it's because it's the third track. And the third track is always our V-disc. And this is where we play some of the tunes that were sent to us by the wonderful Jeff in Charleston. So, whatto, Jeff. And he's sent us a whole batch of these. These are the discs that were recorded by the celebrities and stars of the day, of the great musical tunes. And they would record these 78 tracks, which were called Victory Discs or V-discs, and they were sent to the troops to try and raise the morale. And we have an absolute classic track today, which Harry Edna is going to introduce for us.
I think this has probably got the best title so far played. And this is called I Wish I Could Shimmy Like My Sister Kate by Muggsy Spanier and his Ragtime Band.
sister Kate. Now she's shaking like jelly on a plate. My mama wanted to know last night, while the boys see the kid so nice. Every boy in my neighborhood, I knew she could shimmy and turn up good. I may be late, but I'll be up Tuesday when I can shimmy like my sister Kate. I'm shouting, shimmy like my sister Kate, oh boy.
Of compulsory evacuation of school children. But it is highly desirable from the point of view of their own safety, as well as on other grounds, that as many as possible of these children should be evacuated at an early date. The move is to start next Sunday. In order that it may be organized and the transport and other necessary arrangements made in time, we ask parents to play their part and help the authorities by registering their children at the schools in which they usually attend between tomorrow morning and 1 o'clock next Wednesday afternoon.
This is, in fact, Harry now speaking. I have to say that in case you thought that was me talking a few seconds ago.
I wonder why Harry's launched into sort of BBC newsreel speaking.
It's how I speak every day here in the 1940s Postal District.
Is that when you switch off your Yorkshire lilt?
Well, in fact, that was, as Edna correctly said, is a BBC radio report about evacuation, which happened during World War II. Because in today's programme, we thought we'd feature the Second World War in Britain through the eyes of children. The reason behind this is, in fact, our daughter's just completed a school project on the subject, and she recorded an interview with her grandmother, her grandma, who's in fact my mother. And about her experiences during the war. So we'll be playing that later on, but I thought we'd just started off with a little clip, because when you think of children and war, you think of evacuation. And I thought this leads in rather nicely for me to ask Edna, who makes a career out of talking about said things. In fact, you talk about the case for evacuation.
Yes, I always think when you talk to people about various subjects on World War II home front, it's always a good idea to have sort of a physical prop that you can talk about, because people then can relate to items. And when I talk about World War II evacuation, obviously it evokes a lot of memories for the generations that I talk to, because quite a few of them, talks that I do, have been evacuated, were evacuated as children, or certainly remember the war, or were small children that during the war that don't really remember the war, but obviously remember the after effects of World War II, because I remember it carried on right through into the mid-50s. So you lived for a long time afterwards with the effects. But when I do my talk, I have a small suitcase.
I must interject.
Go on then.
What is actually evacuation, and why would there be a suitcase? Do tell me.
Oh, sorry, I was assuming you all knew. It was really, excuse me, taking children away from where the government or the authorities had deemed to be an area that would be unsafe. So the minute we declared war, we had been seeing images from the Spanish Civil War and the destruction caused by aerial bombardment. So it was sort of an assumption that the minute we go to war, we would start seeing that destruction and devastation in our towns and cities. So plans were made to evacuate basically all those people who wouldn't be able to make it to a shelter, be it a public shelter, Anderson, or whatever shelter you would be going to. So initially it wasn't just children. They'd considered people in hospital, elderly, pregnant mothers, people who basically wouldn't be able to just make it when the air raid sirens went off. But then they realised there was so many thousands and thousands of people, they had to whittle it down, and they decided that the children are the next generation. They're the ones that we want to try and keep safe out in the countryside, away from these areas of heavy industry, railway sidings, areas that we felt would be targets for the enemy bombing. So we had to take them away and keep them safe in the countryside.
So that's what that little radio clip before was talking about, the evacuation of children.
Yes, and parents doing your part by registering your child for evacuation. But when we talk about evacuation, we always talk about the children. But before they were evacuated, an awful lot of work went on in preparation for receiving the evacuated children. Because remember, we'd never done anything really on this scale before. We hadn't had the sort of BEF evacuations, sort of getting all the troops across the channel. So we hadn't done anything on this kind of grand scale. So a lot of preparation had to be put in place prior to children being evacuated. And that's really working out where you send them, where the space is in the countryside. And it got down to somebody literally knocking on door to door, working out how many rooms there were in that particular house, how many people lived there, what space they had, whether they would take evacuees or not. And quite often people didn't want strange children thrust upon them that they didn't know. So not everybody was obviously receptive to having strange children in your house.
So if I get this right, you as a parent would not go with your children, you would send your children away, they would stay with people who you didn't know and would come back when the war finished, they would be there for the duration. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that was generally the idea. I mean, you were encouraged to send your children away to safety, but you also encouraged to, if you had relatives and family they could go to, lots of people made their own arrangements. So children went off to stay with great aunt Ida in the countryside, because she lived somewhere that was safe for them to go to. But yes, generally you would register your child if it was of school age. Now, don't forget, that's sort of 5. Our son went to school at 4. So it was a very, very young age to send children away from home. But if you, as I do, I've got a child of 2.5, so I would have been able to go with my children, especially if I had children under school age. But
once they went to school, that was it. You're on your own, matey.
Yeah. And so if you were an only child, that would have been slightly harder, which I believed your mother.
Well, I'm not going to. That's all to come, because she tells us. She tells the story. We have this story, and we also have another BBC News clip where they're talking about doing an evacuee during the war. Although you have to remember, this will be heavily. It'll be almost a beautiful piece of propaganda. So if we just go back to the suitcase, because I never got round to... Oh, yes, the case for evacuation. Which is typically me. When I do these talks, it's just to really illustrate what children took away with them, because initially children were only allowed to take what they could physically carry. The idea was that mum would send on items later on, but, obviously... Children didn't have an awful lot in those days, so there wasn't really going to be an awful lot to follow necessarily. So they took really what they could physically carry, which would have been their gas mask box and a small suitcase. And I passed around this suitcase, and people are really quite astonished by the weight of it. Because how big would you say it was, Harry? Well, it's designed, isn't it, for about a 6-year-old to carry.
Yeah,
so it's
just thinking it's between a sort of sheet of A4 paper and a sheet of A3.
About
size.
12 inches by about 6 inches and about 4 inches deep. There's actually a picture of it. When we put this online again, we also have a picture next to the show, and I'll put the picture of you holding up the case for evacuation.
Yes, and it just shows you some of the items packed in it. And when I do workshops for children, we do the kind of guess what's in the suitcase. But when I do a talk to adults, I pass it around. They're astonished by the weight. And then it's quite fun to unpack it because really people get a sense of what little the children took away with them.
And as if this is seamless, the
Yes.
next track is going to be Wish Me Luck As You Wave Me Goodbye. I hope, by Gracie. We didn't have a lot of success earlier. I'm trying
She's
again.
in there somewhere.
She's in the box of 78 somewhere. Now, this was, if I remember my history right, this was actually a film that came from a film pre-war, but this became the sort of the anthem of the early war years of not just the soldiers going away, but of course the children as well.
Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Cheerio, here I go on my way. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Not a tear, but a cheer, make it gay. Give me a smile I can keep all the while in my heart while I'm away. Till we meet once again, you and I. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Here I go on my way. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Not a tear, but a cheer, make it gay. Give me a smile I can keep all the while in my heart while I'm away. Here it is again, you and I. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Cheerio, here I go on my way. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Not a tear, but a cheer, make it gay. Give me a smile I can keep all the while in my heart while I'm away. Till we meet once again, you and I. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Here I go on my way. Wish me luck as you wave me goodbye. Not a tear, but a cheer, make it gay. Give me a smile I can keep all the while in my heart while I'm away. Here it is again, you and I. Goodbye, everybody. I'll do my best for you.
We found her.
We found Gracie and a strong Lancashire accent.
Oh, but it's very evocative, isn't it, of waving children goodbye?
It is, because, I mean, of course, the roads, we're not talking the days where there is, or what we call in this country, motorways, or I think they're called freeways, aren't they, in America. That network didn't exist then, so everything was done by rail. And if I remember correctly, because I've heard you talk so many times, the children themselves didn't know where they were going. So they were...
No, and some of them went miles. Don't ask me my geography and mileage. This is where you jump in, Harry. Some of them went from London down to Cornwall. One postcard that we've seen was from a little boy who came from sort of South London and went to St Austell's in Cornwall. Now, how many miles would you say that was? A few hundred?
Well, by today on modern roads, that's probably a good 4 to 5 hours.
Door
and
to
being a
door.
bit generous on the speed limits
Yes. But in those days, they would have either gone by steam train.
That would have been
or
probably about
coach.
6 to 8 hour journey, I'd have thought, on steam train.
Yeah, and they didn't like to stop the trains at stations, because if you've ever tried to steer a group of children anywhere, it is literally like herding cats. So you can imagine, especially in the first wave of evacuation, they went with their schools, so they were already organised into classes, but still trying to herd sort of 20, 25 children, because classes were much smaller in those days, it would have been a nightmare. So they didn't stop at stations to let the children get off and have a toilet stop, as it were, and a quick bite to eat. They were pulled into sidings, weren't they, I believe, and sort of marshalling
You're
yards.
the expert.
Yeah.
We all bow down to you. And if you want to learn more, you said, you can listen to the show again. You go to harryandedna.co.uk and click on the tab that says wireless. Or if you want to hear about the talks that you're doing, it's harryandedna.co.uk. Click on the tab that says talks. And there's one about case of evacuation with Edna holding the box.
Yes, my WVS outfit. Am I? Is that one?
Yes, you are. You're holding your WVS outfit and your pork pie hat.
Excellent.
And or if you want to join us on the Twitter Telegraph, it's hashtag Harry and Edna, and we can have, I believe the social networking term is a conversation. We can hashtag and converse with other people from all over the world. Now, before we do have music on a theme, and we have a lovely little track, and we have a little man too, and this is called Little Man, You've Had a Lovely Day by L.C. Carlisle.
Evening breeze is sighing, moon is in the sky. Little man, it's time for bed. Daddy's little hero is tired and wants to cry. Now come along and rest your weary head. Little man, you're crying, I know why you're blue. Someone took your kitty car away. Better go to sleep now, little man, you've had a busy day. Johnny won your marbles, I'll tell you what we'll do. Why, Daddy'll get you new ones right away. Better go to sleep now, little man, you've had a busy day. You've been playing soldiers, the battle has been won. The enemy is out of sight. Come along there, soldier, and put away your gun. The war is over for tonight. Time to stop your scheming, time your day was through. Can't you hear the bugle softly say? Time you should be dreaming, little man, you had a busy day. Go to sleep now, darling. My little man, you've had a very busy day. Where's my hug? And where's my goodnight kiss? Oh, dear, why, you nearly took my breath away. Now let me tuck the covers up, and I'll put the light like this. Say, now, didn't we have a lot of fun today, darling? Time to stop your scheming, time your day was through. Can't you hear the bugle softly say? Time you should be dreaming, little man, you had a busy day.
Come on, Cyril, let's hear some more about it. What do you think of evacuation?
Well, evacuation is nice. We have nice billets and people look after us very well. Well, we go to school every morning from 9 to 12. Then we come out, we go in the recreation ground. We have our dinners in a place which is called the Pavilion. we set the table. I go in and set the tables and lay the firsts, and then we get the afters, and sometimes we have seconds. And if there's not any seconds, we just go out to play in the recreation ground. Sometimes we go on swings and sometimes we pick up beech nuts. Well, I do mostly pick up beech nuts and take them home for the winter. And when I get home at 4 o'clock, I go in and have my tea, and I go in the street to play. Well, it's not really called a street, that's called a broad piece, because there's a lot of ground which children can play on. Well, we've got a lot of grass which we put together to make a stack. Well, this stack we call a stack, which is full of corn, we call it, and we fix up a thrashing tackle out of carts, trolleys and things, boxes. Well, we thrash like the men, only they have bigger ones, of course. They're not made of boxes, they're made of one big thing. And at the back there's 4 holes, which the wheat and corn comes out of. And the other side is 2 other holes, which the chaff comes out of for the horses. And that's put in a shed for the winter. Well, after that, that's finished now, the thrashing on the farm where the men are.
Oh, bless him.
I say your voice has changed in that.
Yeah, how cute.
That was obviously a wartime recording. I think it's dated 1940, which would be the second evacuation. You had one when the war was first declared, 39, and then then there was another one when the Blitz actually started in the 40s, and then it was later. But that would be a propaganda view to tell parents it's all lovely-dovely.
Yeah, because we had sort of this mass evacuation at the beginning of the war. And we had for a year what we called the phony war, which was, we'd seen prior to the outbreak of war, we'd seen all these images from Madrid, which was just in ruin after these aerial bombardments. And so we just all assumed that, as I said earlier, that's what would happen when war was declared. And then sort of weeks went by, months went by, and although things were obviously happening in Europe, we weren't seeing the scenes of devastation that we assumed would happen. And so people started to sort of think that it wasn't really going to happen. What was the point of sending children out into the countryside? We weren't getting bombed. Children were getting homesick. Obviously, parents were missing children. Children started drifting back home. But it was also around the time when they started to introduce a charge. Now, this was always sort of a people's view as opposed to sort of I don't think I've seen any published documentation on that was one of the reasons, but people linked it to the fact that there was a charge introduced because if you had billeted a child, you were paying for it. Although you got their ration book, you were still having to pay for their rations, and that was just obviously felt very unfair by those people who were looking after these children. And so they made the parents pay some contribution towards the upkeep of their child. And that's when you start to see quite a sudden exodus of children coming back home as well. So it's all sort of wrapped in with each other. And then we start, as Harry rightly said, we started having the Blitz. And so we started seeing these scenes of devastation and destruction. So the government again sort of tried to re-evacuate children, especially out of London, because that we knew that would be one of the prime targets, it being our capital city. That's where the government is. That's the seat of power. So we knew that would be a target. So we had to try and re-evacuate the children out again. And as Harry said, this then happened a second and a third time as children were re-evacuated, or areas that we felt would be safe then became targets themselves. So therefore, those children were then being evacuated out into the countryside as well.
Because one of the great things about doing talks, and I'm so lucky to have you as my font of knowledge, but you give these talks, as you say, to WIs and historical societies, English heritage, I think. Yeah. Oh, we did one at the Imperial War Museum.
Yeah, Duxford.
Just the other day.
Yeah.
And they often you do, particularly on the children's front, because the people who were children during the war tend to be hopefully still alive, where a lot of veterans are now getting on in age. And they come up with nice little tidbits, because you were telling me you used to know a chap and used to work, I think it's with the National Trust, but was he get evacuated 3 or 4 times?
Yeah, he lived in London. I think I can never remember exactly. It was basically there was a sort of huge railway depot that his house backed onto. So that became one of the targets. So his house was bombed, and they were bombed out of their house. They then went to stay with, I think it was his mum's sister, so his auntie, still within London, and then they were bombed out of that house, so he was then moved with his family again. But they couldn't... There was something like there was damage to the house, and the house was deemed unsafe, so the family then had to be separated and the children evacuated. He then went to a fourth area, which was deemed a safe area, and then that started having aerial bombardment as well. So then he was evacuated, I think, bless him, 5 times all in all. And in the end of it, his mum came with him, and then they settled. And this is a story you hear quite often, where mothers will then join their children in the countryside. And actually, especially if you've come out of the suburbs of London, actually they're falling in love with the countryside and the area in which they were evacuated to, and end up settling down. And when Dad gets demobbed, insisting that they want to stay where they've been evacuated to, because they've settled there and they've fallen in love with the place, and just generally a better standard of living.
We're going to have to play a track very soon, but I wanted to touch on, we played that original recording from 1940 of a child saying how wonderful it was. What was the ratio? Because if you look at there was a book, because it carries War recently, and was dramatised, had an actress called Pauline Quirk in it, and it was gave a rather grim view of being evacuated.
Yeah.
So what was the truth? Was it as grim as people said? Was it luck of the draw? How did it work?
It really was. Certainly the people I've spoken to, you get a whole spectrum of experience, and every person you speak to in some way had a different experience. And I've heard the absolutely horrid stories. And sometimes people just won't tell you. They'll just say, I was evacuee and it was horrible. And they don't tell you any more than that. If you ever watch the film Goodnight, Mr. Tom, and there's a scene where the little boy's locked in a cupboard. Now, that was his mother doing that. But one lady said to me, if you have ever seen that film, that's what I went through as an evacuee. And that's as far as they'll tell you. And you just think, what a horrid experience they must have had as a young child. And then you go to the other end of the spectrum where children... I spoke to one lady when we went to the museum at Trowbridge, and we did an event there with them, talking to lots of evacuees and children. And one lady said she came from a suburb in London. She was one of 7 children, but the sisters all got separated and the children got separated. And she ended up being with a group of other younger children, and they went to a country house. Not a big country house. Quite often you had the larger houses on the outskirts of towns taking in large numbers of children because they had staff that could help look after the children, and sort of did it as a group. And she said, I had a wonderful time. I learnt to write there. They had a library. I had access to books. The lady of the house just loved having us children there, and she educated us and took loads of time, took us on walks. We learnt all about nature, the outdoor world, and she said she spent the entire 6 years of her childhood there. Now, any parent will know that 6 years of your child's life is a huge part of their learning and their growing up and their experiences. And she spent the duration of the war there, and she did not want to go home, and she did not want to leave. She did not want to go back to London. And I think they literally dragged her back kicking and screaming. She went home, and as the family come back together, she said, we never ever got on because we had grown apart as a family after 6 years of spending a lot of the war separated. And so she said, I was called a snob because I spoke slightly differently. But she said, but I realised there was a whole other world out there. I then went on, continued my education, and was very, very successful. And she said, had I not been evacuated and been exposed to that, I might never have gone down that road at all. So she had a lovely time.
bit of Count Basie. Now, if you are enjoying the show and you want to hear some more Harry and Edna on the wireless, we're on the Listen Again. If you go harryandedna.co.uk, click on the tab that says wireless, you'll see all the previous shows we've done. And one of the previous ones, not so long ago, you'll see a picture of a chap sitting in a Spitfire, a chap called Terry Arlo. And he's mixing with Hollywood and celebrityness, I believe.
A replica Spitfire, which has been built over 20 years by a man in Suffolk, has been used in a new film directed by George Clooney. The Monuments Men, which stars Clooney, Matt Damon and John Goodman, has been partly filmed at Imperial War Museum, Duxford in Cambridgeshire. Terry Arlo from Beccles used aluminium to build the replica Mark IX plane between 1990 and 2010. The plane does not have an engine, so was filmed in a stationary position. Mr. Arlo said, "The wheels, undercarriage and tyres are original. So 70% of the plane has had Second World War action, while all the framework and riveting have been made from scratch." He said he spent much of the 1980s designing the plane before it was built at workshops at Beccles Airfield, Norwich Airport and other places. Mr. Arlo spent 2 days at Duxford during the filming. You get to see everything surrounding a movie, so that's very enjoyable. But there was a lot of hanging around as well, he said. The replica was filmed alongside 3 or 4 real Spitfires.
One of our planes was missing, 2 hours overdue. One of our planes was missing with all its gallant crew. The radio sets were humming, they waited for the word. Then a voice broke through the humming, and this is what they heard. Coming in on a wing and a prayer. Coming in on a wing and a prayer. Though there's one motor gone, we can still carry on. Coming in on a wing and a prayer. What a show, what a fight. Yes, we really hit our target for tonight. How we sing as we limp through the air. Look below, there's our field over there. With our full crew aboard and our trust in the Lord, we're coming in on a wing and a prayer. How we sing as we limp through the air. Look below, there's our field over there. With our full crew aboard and our trust in the Lord, we're coming in on a wing and a prayer.
That was just pure coincidence, honest Gov.
That was ever so clever, love. Very, very planned.
Theme
well
in the
done.
music. Theme in the music. Now, a lot of these talks you actually do them for schools as well, and it's not just the historical societies.
Yeah.
And this kind of fits in neatly because our daughter, who is 10 very, very soon, recently had to do a school project on what it was like to be a child during the Second World War. And as part of this project, she went to speak to her grandma. And this is the clip of her talking to her grandma about what was it like being a child during the war. Now, our daughter speaks very, very softly, so you may not be able to hear the questions, but hopefully you can guess what the question was.
In the war, because it was quite dangerous where we lived. There was a lot of bombs being dropped by the Germans, and so they felt it was safer for the children to move to the countryside where the Germans didn't tend to bomb, because there's nothing there to bomb very much. So
Where did you live whilst the bombing struck?
they were going on. That was in Hull, which is in Yorkshire, in the north.
Did the Germans bomb there?
Yes, lots.
Was Bell ever in? Did you see any of the bombing there?
Did you see any of the bombing there?
Yes, we used to go to school and say, oh gosh, there's the house gone. Sometimes you'd go by and you'd see the houses had all been bombed. And we went in the town centre to the shops. There was always some building had got bombed when you went in. And you used to smell of water and damp and the strange smoky smell. Always knew a bombed out building had a certain smell about it.
What was your feelings whilst it was going on?
Well, we used to always have to go into the area shelter in the garden, and it meant that you often got up in the middle of the night, because it was always in the night time when we seemed to get bombed, and get up again the next morning for school. You need to be tired. You'd have to get up in the morning and go to school as normal.
Were you ever bombed?
No.
Didn't the house get any sentry bomb on it? We seedlings.
There was carrot seeds, which there was sown in sand, so it was good apparently to grow them that way. But a neighbour took them because I lived near a railway line, and that was why we got bombed quite a lot. The Germans were trying to bomb any railway engines and such like. So a neighbour took these seedlings that were in father and threw them, because the sheds, the good sheds, got bombed with engines and trains in, and threw these onto the fire that the bomb had caused, and so we lost all our seedlings, all our carrots, because my father had an allotment and used to grow a lot of vegetables. But they took them in emergency, they went. So he was at work, so when he got home he wasn't very pleased that all his hard work had got thrown onto the fire.
A landmine came down.
Yes, we did.
What's a landmine?
Well, that was a huge bomb that they dropped, and they were trying to aim for the railways. But there was also between our house, one side we had the railway lines and the engines and the trains, and the other side we had the big school, the school I went to. And there was a field all around this school, and this landmine one night dropped into the field of the school, quite close to our house. But fortunately for us, it didn't go off. It had a fault on it, and it didn't go off. If it had gone off, it would have made a lot of houses would get bombed out, and the school. But it didn't. But we had to leave everybody in that area in the middle of the night. Had to go, because we expected it to blow up any time. But we had to all go and take refuge in another school, which was quite a long way away. And we had to walk walking along in our suitcases, because at our house we always had a suitcase packed ready by the door in case we had to leave quick. And that was the one time we had to go quick and get out. But we went back home the next day and we found that the landmine hadn't gone off, but it made a huge, huge crater in the school field, great big hole. And that was there for years and years, that big hole there. So we were lucky that it wasn't, didn't go off. So that was a bit scary, walking along. Some people still had pyjamas on. We were all prepared with our clothes at the ready in case that happened, so we got changed and did have our clothes on. Some people just left as they were in the pyjamas. And we had to stay in this other school all night and left the next morning and walk home. It was quite a long walk and it was chilly, I remember walking home.
You got slippers on?
I don't think so. I think we were prepared. I thought it was embarrassing seeing people in the pyjamas walking along, thinking, I'm glad that's not me.
Why weren't you evacuated?
I'm not quite sure why. I was always expecting I might have to be. I was told I might have to be. But I was going to go. My parents wanted me to go to my grandparents, who lived quite a way off from where I live. And they never got anybody like them. I was still in Yorkshire, in Harry Edna, but they didn't get much from them at all there. So it was always said if it got really bad, I would have to go live there while bombing was going on. I didn't want to. I was never sent. It was always there at the back of my mind that I might have to. But I just stayed. A lot of our friends all stayed at home too. So, but why we didn't have to go? We escaped that. So I wouldn't like to have gone. I'd rather stay with the bombs.
did all the school teachers?
Yes, I think the men did. I seem to remember we only had lady teachers. Then after the war, we got a lot of men teachers, who had been in the RAF or in the army that came to teach the older children. Because our school's different to what you have now. We have the infants, I don't know what you call them now. First school, it's reception, isn't it? And then you went on to what you would be in now, I guess, junior. And then you moved on to the senior. So you stayed in that same school all your school time, but just moved to different parts of the school. But I don't remember any of my friends going to be evacuated. No.
Did Grandad stay as well?
Well, he was... I didn't know him then, and he lived in Hull, in a different part, more in the city centre area. And he was all ready to be evacuated. He'd gone to the railway station with all his other school children to go. But then, the last minute, his mum changed her mind and took him away. So they went on their own then. They went for safety to live in a seaside place called Scarborough, because they knew people there. So he went there instead of being evacuated for a little while. Then he came back home for a while, and then he went off to another area, over to Lincolnshire, with friends again, to be safe. Because I think he was bombed out once. His house was bombed, so he had to move out somewhere. And he got more damage to his houses because he was more in the centre of the city than I did that was on the outskirts. We only got it really because of the railway line. And he got it because he was in the centre of the town. So he nearly went. He got in line with the railway station. And the last minute he didn't go.
I always think it's lovely to hear a first-hand account from somebody who, although they didn't have direct experience as an evacuee, just had their memories of the wartime bombing.
Well, so that was our daughter's grandma, who's my mother, and so she was always under the threat of evacuation, but never was evacuated. But my father was. Tried to the first time, and then his mother changed her mind and got him back from the train station. There's a film, is it Hope and Glory, 1980s, and someone did that, and in the scene where the child was pulled back, and it reminds me of. I can just imagine my grandma, because my grandmother on my father's side was
strong-willed,
a strong-willed woman. So, and apparently, my dad said there was one heck of a row going on in the station, and I thought I wouldn't want to take on my grandma.
No, but I think I can now empathise with that film, because I don't think it's until you are a parent can you understand the feelings and emotions of saying goodbye to your children for how long you don't know, and you don't know where they're going, because you had no idea of where they'd be evacuated to until you heard back from them. And
would you ever see again? Because you're staying behind where the bombs are.
Yeah.
And what a sombre note to end the show on.
Yes. And we've got a nice emotional song to play out on as well.
Yes, because it is that time, I'm afraid. It's time for us to go. So it's time for me to say tinkly tonk.
And it's a toodle pip from me.
And we're going to sing Good Night, Children, everywhere.
Good night, children, everywhere. Your mommy thinks of you tonight. Lay your head upon your pillow. Don't be a kid or a weeping willow. Close your eyes and say a prayer. Surely you can find a kiss to spare, though you are far away. She's with you night and day. Good night, children, everywhere. Sleepy little eyes in a sleepy little head. Sleepy time is drawing near. In a little while you'll be tucked up in your bed. Here's a song for baby dear.
night, children, everywhere. Your mommy thinks of you tonight. Lay your head upon your pillow. Don't be a kid or a weeping willow. Close your eyes and say a prayer, and surely you can find a kiss to spare, though you are far.
Mister, what you callin', what you doing today? Listen up, we've got something to say. We have got the perfect station for you, full of vintage tunes and interviews too. It's truly spiffing. What ho!
And tell you that Secklow Sounds exists to bring people and communities together to celebrate all that's best in the city. We produce a variety of music and speech programmes produced by local people, and we've been run by over 60 volunteers. And there's always room for more. So if you have a programme idea or a skill that you want to offer, you can email that to volunteers@secklowsounds.org.
MK Pulse proudly sponsors Secklow Sounds. MK Pulse is Milton Keynes' local magazine, bringing helpful information on food, health, fashion, money, travel, culture, and much more to 66,000 readers every month. Plus news, views, and what's on from around the city. If it's happening in Milton Keynes, it's in MK Pulse, and it's available online at www.mkpulse.co.uk. MK Pulse and Secklow Sounds, the heart and soul of the city.